That's abuse. That's abuse.
How in the world does he put up with that? That's insane to me. What do you think about this?
This is the saddest thing I've ever seen. It is this case in point. For every video of this on the internet, there's probably 100 or more cases of this happening.
A man saved a woman who was on the verge of being hit by a car, but was charged with sexual harassment because he made inappropriate contact with her.
Those aren't the same things.
No.
They're very close, but they're not the same, right? Because in one, it is out of gratitude, and the other, it is out of some form of obligation.
It's out of guilt.
I'm not sure that it's out of
ties
guilt.
to guilt.
But let's not overlook the complete double standard here, because if that was a man speaking to his wife that way, the video would be gone, he would be put on blast, they would find out where he was working, where he lived, the cops would be called.
That is insane. Publicly shames her husband on social media for clout. Be on the lookout for whether the guy is willing to put in the work or not, or whether he knows the things that exist there within himself. Because a lot of times guys don't take the time to actually notice these things. All right, let's go ahead and get started with
A man saved a woman who was on the verge of being hit by a car, but was charged with sexual harassment because he made inappropriate contact with her. Police in Los Angeles said 32-year-old Daniel Reed noticed Jessica Moore stepping into the street while looking at her phone. A car was racing toward her seconds away from impact. Daniel reacted instantly, grabbing her and pulling her out of the way just before the vehicle passed.
Great dude.
Surveillance footage later confirmed that his actions had prevented a major accident. However, Jessica later filed a complaint stating that Daniel's actions were inappropriate and violated her personal boundary.
That just set women back a peg. Hey, blame
All right, so what do you think about that off rip? That reminds me of the airport.
That reminds me of women choosing the bear.
Okay, so in this case, the bear is the bus.
Let him choose the bear.
Yeah, let them face the consequences of their own actions, I guess.
It's like, first of all, she's just like,
in her own world.
I've seen so many enter like the crosswalk, even in the crosswalk, mostly not in the crosswalk, in front of Walmart.
Right.
On 10 a.m. on a Monday to go get my groceries. They are just like, and they will look up and give you the dirtiest look. Like it's your fault you're there. Excuse me, ma'am, for existing in a right of way.
Well, it just reminds me of even sometimes women will go ahead and jaywalk and then they're just on their phone and then you honk at them and they look at you like you're the person that's the idiot. And it's like, no, I'm trying to go ahead and save your life. And you could be offended. That's fine. Be offended. But I'd rather you be offended than be pizza or a pancake.
Right? Because chances are it's going to be another chick in the car on her phone.
Oh my gosh. That's the worst.
The oblivious Olympics right there.
Well, right. And then so the idea of this woman then going ahead and pressing suit or filing suit after the fact, when if you look at the footage that's associated with it, it's like clearly she was in the wrong. Clearly her life was in danger. And this guy saved her life. The audacity is insane to me.
Yes. I'm going to need you to put that back where you got it from, ma'am.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, I got him in here cooking tonight after he worked 12 hours. See, this is what you need to do when you come home from work, just like I do every other night, okay? I know he's going to say, well, you should be cooking every night because I pay the bills, but guess what? Guess what, buddy? That's not how it's going to work around here. You're going to put in some extra work when you get home.
Well, why don't you go in there while I'm doing this?
Because I need to make sure you're doing it correctly. What are you talking about? Don't try to push me out of my kitchen.
Yeah, well, you don't need to be up in my space while I'm doing it.
I'm not in your space. I'm just monitoring the situation. I'm making sure you're doing what you're supposed to do. And when you're done, you're going to clean all those dishes in that sink. Because they're not going to do themselves, and I damn sure ain't going to do them. Not after the day that I had staying home all day. I'm stressed out.
If you ever wondered what it would look like for a wife to completely hate her husband yet stay with him, this is it. With that being said, I think that the only path that this man has is to understand that there is no reversing or healing her resentment. It is too far gone, and the fact is that if he continues to just follow her demands, it's only going to get worse for him. So look, he's got two choices here. Either one, if he wants a relationship at some point, he needs to get out of this one first, so he needs to file the papers. The second choice he should take if he just wants as much peace as possible immediately, and that is to completely check out of the relationship. But let's not overlook the complete double standard here, because if that was a man speaking to his wife that way, the video would be gone, he would be put on blast, they would find out where he was working, where he lived, the cops would be called.
All right. That is insane. One, she goes ahead and publicly shames her husband on social media for clout. He's participating in it, knowingly or unknowingly. I mean, I think it would be difficult for him to not see the phone recording at the time, but the idea that he is letting her speak to him this way on a video that he knows, if not obviously, but in the back of his mind, that it's going to end up on the internet. How in the world does he put up with that? That's insane to me. What do you think about this?
This is the saddest thing I've ever seen. It is this case in point. For every video like this on the internet, there's probably 100 or more cases of this happening. That's abuse. That's abuse. But everybody's going to come and go, oh, no, he doesn't know the work that she does. I don't care. Look, man, same boat, same thing. I would never even conceive of doing that.
Yeah.
Because guess what? I like being married.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put up with it.
Do you think she likes being married? Do you
Probably
think he
not.
likes being married?
I don't think she values him, because if she did, she wouldn't treat him that. We talked about before where he's taken his hand off of the wheel, and now she's driving the relationship, and by the looks of it, it looks she's getting ready to take the boat and capsize it or put it or beach it onto the land, and
You can
that relationship
feel-
is going to be ending at some point.
The climate of the relationship there is palpable
Oh, yeah.
through the screen.
Yeah, it's not a healthy place for him at all, right? They went ahead and contextualized it where he went and worked a 12-hour shift, and she stayed at home, and she couldn't get the dishes done, and she couldn't go ahead and get a meal prepared, and she went ahead and shamed him as he was doing part of her responsibilities, and then continued to shame and egg him on, even though he was, hey, look, you can just go. You don't need to be involved in this. And then she doubles and triples down and is, no, I need to supervise you, as if he is an incompetent child, when she is the one that is acting like an incompetent child at the time.
In her kitchen.
In her kitchen, not their kitchen, not his kitchen, her kitchen.
And then telling him he's gonna clean up after that. I'm sorry. The least you can do if he's gonna cook, you gonna clean up. The least you could do.
Sure.
But of course not. This is not anywhere near how
Yeah. And I think that in this case, it seems you can tell that he feels trapped in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I imagine there's kids involved. I imagine that he doesn't want to
the
go
only
ahead.
reason to stay, even an insane reason, but
Sure, because, hey, if he ends up going to the divorce proceedings, chances are she's going to find every resource from the four winds. If she's acting like this in public for people to see, for the whole world to see, I cannot imagine when she goes ahead and takes the mask off and finds whatever shark attorney she could find to just ruin that man's life even more than she already has.
it's insane to even fathom that there's any semblance of any mask anymore still remaining.
I'm sure it can get worse.
Oh, I'm pretty sure. If this is what she puts on the internet, I can't imagine what she doesn't.
Yeah, because normally people put on a mask for polite society. And
This is what she came up with.
That's the equivalent.
This is where she landed on that.
Right. And I can't, if she was staying home all day and genuinely all this other stuff was getting done and she left him to it, that would be one thing. But that isn't the context that we're given. We're given that basically she's staying home all day and then she wants to poke and prod and just ruin this guy's time at home after a 12-hour shift. So I can't fathom what would drive a man other than children and not wanting to break up his family to put up with that. Get help, my guy. Get help.
So these are the kind of
There's no way.
situations where I don't even know if he's aware that he has a choice.
I mean, what would that look like for him?
That like the possibility of being confronted with the fact that you tell people, are you going to put up with that?
Right.
As the look on their faces, the realization or the does not compute, the buffering. Like, I didn't even realize I had a choice.
Sure.
Other than to put up with it.
Yeah. And it's interesting because in that context, I can't really see myself in his shoes. But if there was anything close to that, I would just take the kids and we would go to the restaurant and it would just be me and the kids.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, you can figure it out.
You leave the dragon at home.
Yeah. You go ahead, figure things out. I'm going to go ahead and handle the kids and take care of them. And if you need to go to your mom's place, go right ahead.
Go for it. Please do us all a favor.
Right? Because putting up with that is an invitation to continue that behavior. And because he's not establishing or reinforcing boundaries in a relationship, she's allowed to run amok like that. Where if he had the self-respect to go ahead and be either respect the boundaries or she would find her way out of the relationship, which it seems like she doesn't even really want to be there except for him to be a meal ticket for her.
It's interesting because it seems like this is what women, when they're like, I don't need to depend on a man, blah, 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 blah. This is what they think that looks like. And it's like, and in the words of Dr. Phil, how's that working for you?
Let's take that idea and extend it a couple of steps forward, right? If she is a strong and an independent woman and then she goes ahead and gets divorced, she's going to end up with child support, some alimony, and an equitable division of assets. And at that point, it's not her being a strong, independent woman. It's her provisioning is from that man.
Yeah.
It isn't of her own doing. It isn't of her own creation.
Do you remember a news reporter doing an interview?
No. What are you talking about?
She's like, this is why I would never want to depend on a man. He goes, but wait a minute. Aren't you getting alimony from your ex?
Oh, I remember that.
I was like,
oh, gosh. Yeah, he roasted her.
Oh,
like
my gosh.
Crazy. Well, and it's interesting because if you go ahead and look at the 20 wealthiest women, almost all of them have their wealth from either divorce or inheritance. Nobody in the top 20 is self-made. And I think Oprah Winfrey just barely doesn't make it, and she's the closest there is right now. So it's just one of those things where when we talk about a strong, independent woman, well, if you're not being directly subsidized by a man, like in this context, the entire infrastructure of society depends on men. Like the power lines, the roads, the internet, everything depends on men to go ahead and either establish order, reinforce order, or to build it or maintain it. That's just what it is.
Yeah, and the vast majority of corporate situations where chick is girl bossing it up and I don't need no man. It's if you go enough rungs up that corporate ladder,
she's going to be working for a guy.
Who's up there?
Yeah.
Who's up there sending the mandates down to you that you have to submit to? Oh, it's a bad word.
Yeah. But now let's get a little bit of a palate cleanser after that. I approve of this message.
That's cute.
All of this makes sense. Well, it's just one of those things where, like, that's a wholesome message that we don't get enough of in society because the things that make that relationship work is multifaceted, but they're saying the quiet part loud.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where, hey, it turns out that life is a lot better when we're having fun together. Right? It makes it so the little things don't really matter that much because we take care of each other in the big things and all the important things, or sometimes details get missed. And that's life sometimes.
Like the things where like, you know, everything around us is crazy and like it's just hitting the fan left and right. But in this bubble, there's never any worry that we won't be okay.
Yeah.
The whole world can go to hell in a handbasket. I don't care. That's
we'll
fine.
be all right.
It's gonna happen eventually anyway. I don't care. As long as I'm still you, I don't care if I'm in a box under a bridge. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's very unlikely that would ever happen.
No.
But I do appreciate the sentiment, yes.
Yeah. Because you do your job, I do mine.
Yeah. So oftentimes, a hero's journey starts from a cave where it's dark and damp, and you don't know where you're going or where the destination is. But we're going to talk about something called shadow work. This is dealing with a lot of your inner demons as a guy, and almost all of us have it from our childhood in some way, shape, manner, or form. And oftentimes, it is the culmination of things that were neglected in our childhood that manifest later on in life in our insecurities as adults. And that's basically what we're going to be talking about today. Men want to lead, they want to be strong, they want to attract, they want to build. But a lot of times we have this inner hurt that we have to go ahead and work through to attract, they want to build. But a lot of times we have this inner hurt that we have to go ahead and work through before we can go ahead and stand up, and fight the dragons and climb the mountains and claim the treasure. And today, we're talking about that. The hero's journey of dealing with your inner demons. I think that this is very different for men than it is for women, generally speaking, because I think that in large part, women are trained from their youth to be very self-aware, because that self-awareness and that awareness of the social situations around them, evolutionarily speaking, has been the cornerstone for female survival since the days of old, whereas that has not been the case for men.
Creating that safety gland.
Right. You guys had to go ahead and be, in harmony with your sisters, and you had to be in harmony with the tribe around you so that you can get the community protection that tribe afforded you as women. Whereas with guys, we were praised for what we do and not who we are. And a lot of times there's some tough roads and some things that we face along the way that until we deal with them, we will not be able to succeed at the highest level. So, uncomfortable truths. Oftentimes, men will go ahead and have cultural conditioning that teaches us to bottle up things inside and to not deal with things as they come as far as our emotions. I think oftentimes our society trains men to just have no emotions or to just repress them. Do you see that as a common experience from the men in your lives?
Yeah, definitely. I did see, especially in my family of origin, it was that bootstraps cowboy mentality sort of comes from a bunch of being raised by rednecks. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, they were just like, we just got to do what you need to do and go along to get along, kind of. Just to do the things, take care of your business, and you can worry about the rest later.
Sure, except oftentimes later never comes.
Yeah.
It was the unspoken part of that, right? It reminds me of a saying in Britain where they say, keep a stiff upper lip.
Yeah.
Right? So they want to go ahead and encourage stoicism and to go ahead and keep everything on an even keel for outside appearances. But they never go the extra steps to talk about what to do with that afterwards. And I think that's one area in our society where I think maybe we go kind of overboard in the whole mental healthifying everything. But I think that there is a healthy balance to be struck. There's definitely something to be said about dealing with the struggles of your past and incorporating them into your present. Because it isn't about looking at the past and saying there's no value in some of the things that are there. For example, I'll talk a little bit about stuff that I had in my youth was a lot of anger towards my father. Mm-hmm. And I thought that the solution to that problem was to be the opposite of my father And though that served me well in lots of ways, it wasn't until I went ahead and took the time as an adult to really look at his entire character and find the good things about him that led me to be able to incorporate a lot of the backing to why I was angry about things to help to fuel me to be a better husband to my wife and a better father to my children. Without taking the time to address the anger, the heartache, the resentment towards my father, I would not be in the position I am today. Because I could easily see myself having emotional outbursts when I was reminded of my father in my own actions.
Yeah, having those kind of reactions to things almost in a knee-jerk way where you didn't even know where that was really coming from.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to go ahead and talk about even more. And I think that a lot of times these things are things that go ahead and show themselves in a man's life by how he avoids things. You might avoid feeling things and be reactive. You might go ahead and take a knee-jerk reaction because you don't want to feel to begin with. You're afraid of the way that you feel or what you will do if you go ahead and actually contend with it in a mature way. A lot of times you may just give up on boundaries or be passive because you don't want to go ahead and be faced with the responsibility associated with what's going on in front of you, right? Sometimes it is you just feel like a failure, and when you feel like a failure, oftentimes you are tempted to shut down. Or it could be just one of those things where because you have seen levels of failure over time that you lose confidence in yourself and your ability to be effective in the world around you. Each of those things are different ways for this concept to rear its ugly head in men's lives. Is there something that is somewhat similar on the woman's side of the coin?
I think honestly, especially being more of an elder millennial, which honestly more akin to Gen X than like our technical generation. I honestly didn't really see a whole lot of dealing with issues in the females in my family either. It was either kind of survival mode, got to handle things because there's no one else to, or it doesn't matter now. It wasn't, it's in the past and we just kind of move on. But there's still that bringing that baggage with you, whether you want to admit it or not.
Right.
And really honestly, especially when I became a mother, I was like, there's a lot of stuff that I need to probably deal with. And it just kind of came up as a matter of necessity. Is almost like when I just kind of hit a health wall, then it was like, not only do I need to, come to terms with what's happening and not being in control of my own circumstances, but also the fear of that and the constant stress level that brought was really bringing up a lot of stuff from before.
That's really interesting that you bring up stress as it relates to this, because I find that it is in times of stress that these cracks in the foundation show themselves to be what they are. Now, what we're talking about today is the concept of the shadow self, which is popularized by Carl Jung. And the idea is that there are things that are in the conscious mind, the things that we think about actively, but oftentimes it is the things that exist in our programming and in our subconscious thoughts that can tend to rule over us if we haven't taken the time to struggle with them and reckon with them and integrate them into who we are today. I think one of the big things is guys, generally speaking, have this dungeon that they have to face on their own. And a lot of times you can go ahead and bring aboard the assistance of a party. But when it comes down to it, the fight is a one-on-one deal. For those of you that may not have ever played Final Fantasy IV, this reminds me, oh wow, tearing up. Because it's just one of those things that this scene in this game was so impactful to me. So
We have perler bead little things hanging from our rearview mirrors in our cars. He has Cecil as a paladin, and I have Rosa.
okay, for those of you that don't have any context to Final Fantasy IV,
Go look it up.
let me go ahead and just give you a little bit of context before I actually get to this scene, because it's going to go ahead and set the stage of why it was impactful to me and why it's my favorite video game. So, in Final Fantasy IV, there's a nation called Baron, and they were a peaceful nation, and they had a dark influence that had taken over the king, and the king went ahead and sent out his air force to take these crystals that controlled the 4 elements in the world. And the leader of the air force was Cecil. He's the protagonist of the story, and there came a point where he was sent out under the influence of this king to go and take the water crystal from a city of mages. And as part of the mission, he had to go and strike down all these innocent people. And it really wore on him, because he had been adopted by the king before he came under this influence that took over him. After he came back from the mission, he had expressed his regret, and he expressed concern over the means by which things happened and why things had changed so suddenly. And so he was expelled, and he had to deal with that inner turmoil of having done horrible things and slaughtered innocent people. And so the early part of the story is consumed with Cecil's redemption arc. He went ahead and had to reckon with the fact that the dark sword that he had used to get him to where he is today, or where he was not the thing that would go ahead and carry him forward. Just an aside, I talked a little bit about how my main conflict in life was my story with my father. How I came into possession of Final Fantasy IV was my father brought it home to me. He apparently found it at a gas station, just randomly laying on the top of the gas pump. And he brought it to me. And playing that game led me to go ahead and learn to read and do a lot of things, because I was so young at the time. And I had developed a fondness for it, even though my father and I didn't have a great relationship. So it's interesting that this game had such a big impact on me, and that 10 years later, I would discover that was my main fight within myself. But let's go ahead and continue on with the story of Final Fantasy IV a little bit. Eventually, Cecil comes up to a challenge that he can't beat with the dark sword. And he had to go humble himself back into the city of mages, where he went ahead and did the atrocities that he did. And the elder there had instructed him that maybe he needs to find another way. And he told him about a legend of, renouncing the darkness and embracing the light, which is an allegory for Christianity and all this other stuff. That's neither here nor there right now. But he had to climb a mountain. They called it Mount Ordeals. Interestingly enough, it was an ordeal. And he was accompanied by a couple of mages from that city that had been sent to spy on him. And so he had to surmount a bunch of challenges that, as you go through that dungeon, Cecil's primary weapon doesn't work on most of the enemies in that dungeon. And you are left to depend on the aid of the mages that were assigned to him. And once you climbed the mountain, you faced off against a boss, and then you got to the scene. You had to go into a cave, and there was a wall of mirrors. And Cecil's challenge was to face himself, and to face his atrocities, and to face everything that led him to where he was today, and to challenge him to take on a new role and a new life. And so what he ended up doing was he took the sword that we didn't know at the time, but was his father's sword, to stand up to himself and to withstand the darkness. Your job in the fight against yourself was to just survive. Because if you were to attack yourself with the primary combat commands, you would never win the fight. The fight was scripted so that you were not to engage in combat in the traditional way, but to go ahead and like stand peacefully and to withstand the brutality of the things that he had done. And so this was emblematic of his redemption, to give up all the things that he had done in the past, and not to just do away with it, but to incorporate it within himself as something that he would learn to do later in the story. But at that point in time, he had to let go of his past so that he can embrace a new future. This kind of reminds me of the idea of baptism in Christianity, is the idea of letting go of the past and turning away from sin so that you can go ahead and die to sin, be buried in the waters of baptism, and rise in the newness of life. And so, in a lot of ways, this game and this scene and this whole structure around it is a really good story to encapsulate this concept of the shadow self and to master oneself and to embrace the darkness within and to put it in its proper place. Because there is a time and a place to go ahead and let your instincts go. And there's another time for you to go ahead and be under control. This reminds me often of how we talk about how a real man is not a man who is a lamb, who is subject to the whims of everybody else, but is a man who is, in the biblical sense, he is meek. He is a sword within its sheath who can be drawn and can be used to great effect at a moment's notice for the right reasons. Wow, that was unexpected how that was going. Do you have any commentary before we move on?
It's interesting, the way that it progresses that way, coming to terms with past self to move forward. Mm-hmm. You have to look back at it and see it for what it is and let it affect you as it will. But it's not penance where you're doing something to make up for it, because you can't.
Right. It's the difference between grace and Judaism's version of atonement. Sacrifice as opposed to just giving in and understanding that grace is unmerited favor.
It's interesting because there's still that kind of worldly way of looking at past misdeeds.
Right.
Where even if you say, oh, I'm not that person anymore, I'm a new person, blah, blah, blah. Still, there's people who kind of, even if they don't say it, mm-hmm. they are living like they have to do good things to get that, which you cannot even do. You can't do anything to attain it.
Are you talking about the idea of people being performatively good?
Not performatively. They actually think that they have to do good things rather than it being an outpouring of what was done for you.
Okay. I think that a lot of times that really comes from a difference in motivation, right? Is if you're doing it because you feel that is your burden or your responsibility is not entirely different, but different enough that it is distinct from the idea of doing something because someone has done something for you. Those aren't the same things.
No.
They're very close, but they're not the same, right? Because in one, it is out of gratitude, and the other, it is out of some form of obligation.
It's out of guilt.
I'm not sure that it's out of guilt.
It has ties to guilt.
It could be, but it could be obligation separate and distinct from guilt.
But either way, any way you slice it, mm-hmm. in doing that kind of thing where you have this mentality that you have to do these things to either keep away that stuff happening again or like do any kind of work, that is a way of managing your own, it's still managing your own sin you under Mosaic law from before.
Okay.
And in that way, you are saying that you have more power over this than God does.
Yeah.
And honestly, I am so glad I don't have to manage that. I'm so glad I don't have to take that stuff on because, one, you can't. Mm-hmm. While we wear skin, there's going to be some of that other stuff creeping in.
Yeah.
So at least you can at the very least, tell yourself, I've had done good to me or good done to me. So I want to just do good anywhere and everywhere I can.
Yeah, that reminds me of the idea of passing it along or paying it forward. Because, shoot, I've been I'm beneficiary of that so much in my life, where I've had the good fortune of having great mentors step into my life from time to time to kind of help me out with things. And part of the reason why we do the podcast in the first place is an act of pushing that forward to other people.
Yeah, it's an extension of those.
Yeah, it is the very fruit of that idea for me, is to do that so that others can benefit from its message.
Objectively, not having really had tough things happen. I mean, obviously, nobody lives in a bubble of hearts and rainbows and unicorns, but I have always had at least my mom teach me that we live well. And there's so many people who are so much worse off. And so as long as we have it in us to do, we should do for others what we can. And I don't think it was honestly until the stint of time where I got real sick where I had to be the beneficiary and I had no choice. That was more of a real lesson in that you should do for others as much as you can, as often as you can, because of how it felt to be that on the receiving end of it, where I didn't want to be.
Okay, well, let's take this a little bit into the practical. Sometimes we need to go ahead and look at how are we going to deal with some of these things that are going on in a guy's life. We're going to go ahead and look at it from a 3-step framework. First step is to recognize your triggers and the things that cause you to respond to things. The second part is to meet the things that you want to disown and tangle with them. And the third step is to integrate the parts that make sense and to lay to rest the parts that don't. 3 steps. And we'll talk about a little bit in how that might look in your daily practice, but just getting the idea of those 3 steps is, I think, something that'll bring about ideas for the audience of how they can put these things together. The first step being recognizing patterns and triggers. If you notice that you're prone to anger, when are those times that you are most likely to fly off the handle? And eventually you're going to come across points of commonality. And when you can go ahead and get those points of commonality dialed in, you'll eventually find what it is that's causing it. And it may not be just one thing. It could be a whole basket of goods and experiences from your childhood that bring this to bear. And for each one of those, it's important to take the time and to meet with it and to actually feel it and to understand what it was that your impression of it, that idea in the past, leads you to react the way that you react today. Mm-hmm. And there could be a lot of good in recognizing not only the behavioral patterns, but the context around which you typically have those reactions, and then figuring out whether the things that lead you to feel that way are actually worth it. Because a lot of times it is a misunderstanding of things of the past. A lot of times I find that it's an incomplete story that you've let get etched on your heart, where had you had the additional context of why things went the way they did, could go ahead and lead you to have much more peace about it, even if it's a horrible situation. And being equipped with that context often will allow you to have the tools to actually talk to somebody about it. And sometimes you need to go talk to somebody about it to dig into that in the first place, right? Whether it's a group of male friends or whether it's a coach or whether it's a therapist, right? I wouldn't really recommend going to therapy specifically for that with just anybody. I would go ahead and really interview a few people before doing this work.
A lot of people just, get a therapist assigned to them and then they're just unhappy with it and they get mad at therapy itself rather than the actual recognizing that maybe you and that professional don't jive. In the wider world of medical professionals and medical teams and stuff like that, people don't realize that just like they can refuse to see you, you can demand to see somebody else. Obviously, you don't want it to be this whole one-sided thing where you just get to complain about your stuff to this person, and because they ask you to think about it this way or to do some extra like work on things or practice certain techniques or whatever, then you're mad at them because they didn't just let you complain about it. Mm-hmm. You know, that kind of thing. Most time, especially with complex issues that go back decades and all of that stuff, there's going to be work to do, especially working with a medical professional, a professional therapist to do this kind of stuff. There's homework. I went to therapy on two separate stages recently. And then once while I was real sick. But there was always a homework assignment.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed like my therapist was pleasantly and surprised and proud of me that I would actually do these things. Sometimes it was within hours of me seeing them, but I got it done.
You got your homework done.
I got the homework done because that tells the other person, but it also tells yourself that you want to do the work.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that I heard a statistic earlier today because I was watching the various podcasts that I watch in the morning, and a statistic was brought up that startled me a little bit, that of therapists age 30 and younger, 95% of them are women. And I was not entirely surprised, but that's just striking. And for a lot of guys, there's no way that they would really want to bear this to a female therapist for the most part. And so a lot of times the idea is to find someone you can connect with, and it's fine to go ahead and do a trial run with a few different therapists before you step in. And if you know ahead of time that you're probably not going to want to deal with this kind of thing with a woman or with a certain person of a certain demographic, it's okay to make reasonable requests for that.
Yep.
There's, now that we have telecommunications that allow us to do things via Zoom and all this other stuff available, there's no reason that you should be limited to the resources that are in your local area, which I think was the big hurdle to overcome even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of times people were stuck with what they could reasonably do in their local area or where they could go reasonably within short driving distance of where they live.
Yeah.
Which is more of an issue in remote areas like where we live, and a lot less of an issue in major metro areas like Los Angeles or Dallas or something like that, because you could just drive wherever and see somebody. But I would just recommend to guys that, hey, don't be limited to people that are nearby, because we have the internet now. And things aren't changing in the other direction anytime soon.
Yeah. But also, definitely, if it doesn't work out, get somebody else.
Yep.
Find somebody else that jives better.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about some daily practices that might can help out with getting through this. Here is one exercise that you can do. It could be something like journaling. This is a morning grounding exercise where you provide yourself the prompt, what did I avoid yesterday? And that could go ahead and lead you to discover things that you are contending with unconsciously so that they could bring it forth and you can deal with it in the forefront. Because if you go ahead and analyze the things that you avoid, you are much more likely to see why it is what it is. And if you go ahead and do it early in the morning, you've got your mental faculties and you're more likely to be fresh and ready to deal with whatever fallout comes of that.
There's also, so there's a book called The Artist's Way.
Okay.
And they have a practice. I don't know who the author is. I don't remember. I just remember hearing about this, and I don't think it's for me personally, but this might be helpful to somebody out in the wide world. It's called Morning Pages. It's pretty much you just do a stream of consciousness. Anything that's in your brain, rattling around, thinking about it, just word vomit onto pages. And the practice is you just keep writing with a pen, and you just scratch out as you go along if you, whatever. Doesn't matter how it looks. Doesn't matter if you spell things right. Doesn't matter. Whatever color pen speaks to you, doesn't matter. And you just write until you have gotten to 3 pages, I think is their practice. But I mean, this can be adapted for whatever. You want to do just 5 minutes and grow from there, or do 1 page or 2 page, whatever.
Sure.
Doesn't matter. But it's just getting the thoughts out there and keeping them in a place. And then if you needed to, you can refer back to things and be, wait a minute, I had this realization. I think I wrote about this 2 days ago. And you can make these connections, just things that because you wrote it out and didn't just keep it swirling in your head until it either left or you did something about it.
Yeah.
It's just a wild thing that I've heard people have like found so many weird self-discoveries because of it.
Well, yeah, that reminds me of the idea of, say, if your whole self was a pane of glass and something happened, some trauma happened, and it shattered you. A lot of times you're going to go ahead and find the evidence of that in your feelings. And it's like the broken glass, the shards of glass that went ahead and made up your former self. And they will come in bits and pieces along the way sometimes. It's oftentimes, in fact, the vast majority of the time, it is not going to be a clean process. It's going to be the collection of fragments from time to time, and the ability to go ahead and look back on things that you endured and experienced in the past because you've written it down is a great way for us to unlock our ability to be deductive problem solvers like we are as men, to look at all the clues that are before us and to try to put the pieces of the puzzle together to see what's up.
Yeah. But having said what you said before about knowing your triggers and whatever, I think it would be cool to put those practices together and kind of go back and you just start writing about all of the times that you can really remember that you just really got mad about what it was, who was involved, and how it shook out maybe.
Sure.
If it did.
Yeah.
And having a pattern of that where you can find common threads in those things where it's like, oh my goodness, it was when somebody betrayed a confidence or reneged on a promise or something like that. And you see all these kind of, for lack of a better term, I don't remember the psychological terms, it's been a minute, like these kind of abandonment issues in relationships.
Sure.
Where these people aren't reliable. These people you trusted them and they aren't safe.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me. I went through things that really still stick out to me as negative memories from my childhood. And it was people who were supposed to care for me and failed.
Yeah. I find that oftentimes the root of this is some form of neglect. It isn't always abandonment. It could be as simple as instructing somebody to clean your plate. Sage advice from the past where it came from a scarcity mentality that, hey, you need to go ahead and make sure you clean your plate. A lot of times that gets internalized. Then you end up with all you can eat buffets and then your waistline expands 10 inches because of habits that you have took on yourself because of that which you were exposed to in your youth.
Yeah, or manifests in different ways where almost like, oh my gosh, I'm $80,000 in credit card debt because every time I go to a thrift store or TJ Maxx or whatever, and it was on sale and it's not going to be there again, I buy it.
Right, because the fear of missing out just grips you and you never want to miss out on something because you missed out on so many things as a kid.
Yeah. And I know, family members who they had that kind of scarcity life. They lived it. And where it becomes almost this warped, not wanting to pass that on, that kind of thing. When they see things that they know other people or whatever, they'll go into the hole buying things just to buy them because they know they could give them to other people and they would like them.
Sure.
I've seen it.
Okay.
And if this thing is like, well, it's so good, but it's rooted in something that's very unhealthy.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and talk about it. We talked about morning grounding and a prompt of what did I avoid yesterday. A couple of other things that you can do to kind of be practical with daily exercises are things like a midday trigger check-in. When a thing happens, don't go ahead and stew on it. Do your thing. Do what needs to be done. And then the moment you can go ahead and get a breath of fresh air, write down or think through, like, what was that? Where did it come from? And, like, write it down. If for no other reason than to go ahead and put words to it and to leave it as clues for your future self to reckon with. And then the third thing is just evening reflection. This kind of thing can happen whether it's morning or night or during the middle of the day. The idea is to look back on the day and see if something happened that you need to address. It's okay to take that 5 minutes you would have been doom scrolling on the internet to look at it, think about it for a little bit, and go, what's actually going on here? And then if you don't have enough context to go ahead and meet it out there, write it down and leave it as a clue for your future self.
You can actually just write your own prompt to answer later.
You can set yourself up.
Tell me about that thing that happened with that person at that one time.
And it's interesting because after a good night's sleep and you take a look at that question that you've asked yourself in the past, you may end up with a different set of answers after your brain has been able to process things over time, right? And I would encourage guys that if you're going to go ahead and take on these processes, to do it with some form of consistency until you can wrestle with your past and integrate them with yourself. And you'll find along the way that even after having done this work, that something will come up and that you will need to take the time to reckon with it. Once you have taken your steps to build yourself up in this manner, you're going to have so much more emotional resilience and strength to actually deal with this stuff as it comes along and to deal with it in its proper time rather than bottling it up and letting it boil over. Mm-hmm. And by doing this consistently and to be among men or to be among people that will help hold you accountable, whether it's a coach, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a spiritual leader, whether it's a brotherhood, any of these things could be essential to helping you along your path to do this stuff consistently so that you can be equipped to be the resilient and strong man that you are intended to be. By doing this stuff, the whole point is to let your outside and your inside be one being, and for you to be congruent, to have your words and your actions match, and for your feelings to be something that you harness and you're not a victim of. I know there are so many men out there that have endured so much trauma in their past that cannot control their emotions, and they let their emotions run wild. And a lot of those men are in jail right now. If we're being really honest, that's just what happens. Is the men that cannot control their emotions often end up doing pathological things and end up in the prison system.
Especially when they had no one to show them how to channel any kind of feelings and process through them.
Yeah,
it's really a muscle. It's a muscle, and you have to exercise it, just like weightlifting.
It's when I describe to people the two most important tasks that I have set before me as a father. There are two. The first of which is that I want to make sure that my daughters don't end up on stripper poles. And the second of which is I want to make sure that my sons don't end up in jail. If I've done those two things, I have succeeded as a father. Low bar. But there are a lot of fathers that don't succeed at that low bar. Dudes, even if you can have that as a standard, I think that our society would be so much better off if we could commit to the actions that result in our daughters staying off of stripper poles and our sons staying out of jail.
And mothers, do not get in their way.
Because a lot of it's going to involve tough love and real talk, real conversations, and holding them accountable. And it may not look touchy-feely and all that stuff, but it's got to happen because it is my responsibility for my sons to know that they are accountable to their actions and that they have to go ahead and take their place in our society. And that our daughters are much better off understanding why they believe what they believe and holding themselves to a standard so that they can find a suitable mate to support in his mission. In doing so, they are much more likely to not be on stripper poles than anything else. So, went ahead and talked about a lot of stuff today. And there's a lot that goes into this. It can be a tough time to deal with the shadows of the past and to incorporate them in your now and to live on in the future. Do you have any recommendations for women who are with men with these struggles?
It's a fine line to support without trying to, honestly, in some weird, not exactly the same way, to like fix.
Right.
It is not at all your responsibility, definitely stepping out of your lane to try to fix this thing. We talked about practicing these things as being working a muscle. You're there to just spot. But you can only do so in a deep, established, committed relationship. Again, when we talked about advice to sons, you cannot let this stuff happen in a situation where there's any even inkling that this would be weaponized by your partner.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I think that women are much more likely to encounter this in their youth if they're going with the find their dark horse strategy, right? As opposed to just like being or getting the best they can get at whatever level, right? Is if they are trying to find a diamond in the rough, oftentimes the man that needs to deal with issues to be his true self is probably something that you're going to stumble upon. And if you can help that man along that journey, you're going to end up with an amazing reward as a result of it. But beware that that isn't a license for him to indulge in the emotional waves and tempests that come with not having that resolved issue.
Or any actions that are an unhealthy outlet for manifesting those things.
Yeah.
You don't, obviously that's not a man that's willing to do the work. They want to cope.
Sure.
And then you turn into from being a support system to an enabler.
Right.
And you don't want that.
Sure.
Obviously. You cannot, with anybody, you cannot help someone who doesn't want to help themselves.
Yeah.
You can't.
And so I would say that women need to be on the lookout for whether the guy is willing to put in the work or not, or whether he knows the things that exist there within himself. Because a lot of times guys don't take the time to actually notice these things. A lot of times we're too busy dealing with stuff in life, and that when this kind of thing comes up, we ignore it, we avoid it, we play video games, we sleep, we overeat, we do all these other things.
Which are not bad in and of themselves, but overindulgence.
Right, overindulgence or using it as a replacement for dealing with the crap that you have to deal with in life is the unhealthy part.
Yeah, it's an indicator of a lack of self-control.
Right.
Which you should already have, because you shouldn't be just like venting all of this to everybody.
Yeah.
You're not Anakin Skywalker. You don't emotionally pee your pants every third scene. So
He had a lot of stuff going on.
But honestly, that is one of the probably biggest functions of being a woman in a partnership with somebody who's walking through these kinds of things, is you aren't going to sit there and let them, let it out every which way. But also, sometimes when men don't understand what's going on and they're reacting to things a certain way, in a respectful way, bringing my concerns to you from my own perspective, it's the same. It's all in the approach. Is you can actually, especially with our enhanced kind of self-awareness, you can kind of use that kind of superpower to help your spouse.
Yeah.
To be that kind of almost a thermometer and going, hey, I'm noticing this thing. Is it maybe something you maybe need to think about?
Sure.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think that so few women approach these things that way. And so it is very difficult for men and women to get on the same sheet of music with that kind of, because a lot of times the way that it manifests is in nagging and in insults or denigrating the man for not having that level of awareness.
And again, that's weaponizing that kind of and taking advantage of that vulnerability.
Right.
And that's gross. And that's what makes men not want to deal with things, one. And two, not to want to even deal with it with you.
Right.
You can't. But that's what it truly is to walk with somebody through things like this. Is I'm noticing this. Is this a thing? Is it not a thing? Is it maybe something to think about? That's it. And you leave it there. You cannot go and you need to deal with this, because usually it comes out. Oh my God, you're bitching about everything. Take a Midol, you know? And it's like, it's not the way.
Yeah. So advice to guys is be open to the possibility that you don't know everything that's going on with yourself. It turns out that sometimes we could be the crazy person in the room, even if we're the only person in the room. That's what it is sometimes. And be open to the possibility that there is work to be done, and to take the time to take the steps to figure out what's actually going on and to do something about it. One step at a time. Because this isn't an easy process. This isn't something that could be handled overnight. This isn't something you shoot an email. It's not a bill to be paid. In a lot of ways, it's a bill to be paid every day by living life in a way that is integrated, where you take all the things from your past and you carry it into the now and keep all the good parts and lay aside the bad and to move forward. So that is going to go ahead and put an end to this podcast for today. Hey, if you like this clip, go ahead and click right here for the full podcast episode. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe right over here. Thanks so much for your time. Make it a great day.